There's a new day dawning, the time is at hand, where the glory of the Lord will be revealed to every man. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in. Open the door.
Well, let the King of Glory in. Open up the door starts right now. So fling wide you heavenly gates. Prepare the way of the risen Lord. The Apostle John was on the island of Patmos. He was in prison for the testimony of Jesus Christ. And he heard a sound behind him and said, Behold, I looked. There was a door standing open in heaven. And I heard a voice which is like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, Come up here, and I will show you the things which must take place. That's what we need, my friends. The heavenly perspective of the things that are going on in the world around us, the things that the Word of God foretold us would come to pass, those things which must take place, those things which are taking place even now. That is what this broadcast is all about, concerning the issues of the times in which we live from a biblical perspective and worldview. Good afternoon, everybody. What you are about to hear is the fusion of heart, mind, and soul. Andy White here, and I want to welcome everyone from all across the fruited plain and all around the spherical globe. Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Open Up the Doors. I am streaming live over on my YouTube page. If you go on over to YouTube, join in the conversation over there. Please let me know where it is you're watching from, where you're listening from. Introduce yourself. If you've never subscribed to my YouTube page, please subscribe to my page. Hit that little bell next to the subscription button, and you'll be notified when we do these live events from Faith FM or other live events that I might be engaged in. So again, please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. We are streaming all across the fruited plain and all around the spherical globe on Faith FM. But if you're outside of the Faith FM broadcast area, best way to listen to us is to download the free Faith FM app. We have the app for the Android platforms over at Google Play, the app for obviously iPhone, iPad over at the App Store. App is free. Best way to listen to Faith FM 24/7 for great Christian broadcasting and programming from the east end of Long Island. You can also follow me on Parler at AJ White 777. That's AJ White 777. Join me up over there on Parler. And praise God. I think that covers my preliminaries a little bit at the moment here now. Well, I want to give you a little bit of what they call in the broadcasting business, a teaser. Coming up a bit later in the broadcast, I'm going to be sharing with you what the World Economic Forum is planning in July regarding a simulation of a global cyber attack. It's called Cyber Polygon 2021. And you need to hear it, so I want you to stick around for the whole broadcast, of course, but I'll be talking about that in the second block. But before I get to that, I need to lay out a bit of what we've been seeing recently with the increasing cyber attacks that we've been experiencing here in many different levels and avenues here in America. And one of the questions that seriously needs to be raised, my friends, is, has a global cyber warfare already begun? And what could it lead to? Is there a global cyberstorm, if you will, on the horizon? You know, several years back, I predicted, in fact, I think it was about, three years or so ago, I predicted that a trade war with China would lead to a cyber war. I remember talking about that in a particular broadcast several years back. I said that a trade war with China, well, it will lead to a China war, but a trade war with China would lead to a cyber war, which would ultimately lead to a hot war. And sadly, it appears on many levels to be playing out as I suspected that it would. We're being told by many in the intelligence community to prepare for cyber warfare. We're being told to prepare for cyber attacks. But it should be pretty clear to anyone who's paying attention these past really several years, but especially the past several weeks, months, should be pretty clear to anyone who's paying attention that these cyber attacks are already going on, and they are increasing. And those are only the ones, by the way, that we're hearing about, the ones they can't quite cover up because they're affecting too many people. But there's a whole lot of stuff going on, my friends, that we're just not hearing about. Now, before I even go on, let me state this. Talking about cybersecurity and cyber warfare can get very heady and very geeky, and it can go into realms that most of us, including me, can't even comprehend. So my goal in this broadcast, folks, is really, I'm just going to try and just bring it down to an understandable level regarding the threat that we're already dealing with it. And it promises to become a whole lot more serious in the days, weeks, months ahead. And I want to try and make it as simple and as understandable as possible without getting into the weeds of cyber security and internet geeky stuff, because that's totally beyond my pay grade. But imagine just how quickly society would disintegrate if electricity, water, fuel, the food supply chain, and other essentials were shut down due to a cyber attack. Well, we really don't have to imagine it too much anymore, do we? We saw a very small glimpse of it just last month with the hack into the Colonial Pipeline. Not to mention the lockdowns and the chaos we saw over the course of the last year with the coronavirus pandemic. And trust me, as you will see, these things are, in fact, very much connected. But in March of 2020, a massive cyber attack they hacked into the SolarWinds organization, something that most of us had probably never heard of. That occurred back in March of 2020, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit. But this past March, a year later in 2021, Microsoft Exchange had a major cyber attack. The funny thing is, I saw a media report just the other day that said the Microsoft Exchange hack, which came from China, is unrelated to the SolarWinds attack that the U.S. government and businesses a year ago, they're still reeling from that. In fact, I believe that some of the things we're seeing recently with Colonial and with the beef industry that just got hit, I'll get to that in a minute. I believe that we are just beginning to really see the ramifications of what the SolarWinds hack was about a year ago, because it left government reeling. And that hack, the SolarWinds hack, is suspected to be Russia. But this news report said, oh, they're unrelated. Now, let me tell you something, folks. Quite honestly, if you think for a moment that Russia and China are not colluding together to cyber attack us, you're really not paying attention. They are very much connected, if you will. To say that they're unrelated, I think, is whistling past a graveyard at midnight, if you ask me. In any case, we're beginning to witness, as I said a moment ago, more and more attacks. And we're beginning to witness these attacks on our supply chain infrastructure. First, the attacks were on, like I said, SolarWinds, which was, I'll get into that later, but it was massive. And then Microsoft. But that laid the groundwork for what we're just beginning to see now. The attacks on our supply chain infrastructure. With, like I said, with Colonial Pipeline last month, that was an attack on our oil infrastructure and our energy supply. And it was mild, but I suspect I have a theory about what's going on right now. But this past week, our meat supply, our food chain infrastructure was attacked I don't know how many of you heard about this, but Brazil-based JBS, which is the world's largest meat producer, has shut down, I think it's 9 American plants just this past Tuesday. 9 American plants from this meat producer have been shut down because of another cyber attack. These shutdowns impacted, there's 9 of them here. I'm looking at my notes. 9 plants located in Arizona, Texas, Nebraska, Colorado, Wisconsin, Utah, Michigan, Pennsylvania, according to officials from the United Food and Commercial Workers International Union, which represents more than 25,000 jobs and employees. They shutted these plants down, and this accounts for 25% of U.S. beef supplies. And as of yet, I don't believe that has been rectified as of yet. Now, obviously, this attack raises concerns of a potential meat shortage. What we saw with the Colonial Pipeline was a gas shortage that thankfully was rectified in a week to several days. But here's the thing, we're being attacked. And now all these concerns are coming up about our supply chain infrastructure. Just yesterday, here in New York, it was reported that hackers infiltrated computer systems for the New York Metropolitan Transportation Authority, what we call the MTA here in New York. And they were hacked. It was confirmed just yesterday. The officials said in a statement that the agency received an alert from the FBI and other federal agencies saying that 3 of its 18 computer systems were put at risk. The MTA insisted that it quickly shut down the attack. It said a follow-up forensic analysis also found that no sensitive information was stolen. They always say that, of course. They always say that. When the Microsoft Exchange was hacked, and millions of people's emails were now exposed to these hackers, and all kinds of chaos is still going on from that hack. They would say, "Oh, we don't think anybody's." They always tell us, "Oh, we don't think anybody's sensitive information was taken." Yeah, they lie through their teeth, of course. But that's neither here nor there. I digress. The MTA said that they did a follow-up forensic analysis and found that no sensitive information was stolen, and that rail service for millions of riders each day and other operations were never compromised or disrupted. Let me add, at least for the moment. The cyber attack was first reported yesterday, as I said, by the New York Times, citing an internal document that was not made public. So we've got to rely on, the New York Times. Yeah, right. But it was suspected that the breach had links to China, according to the Times. So we've got Russia hacking into SolarWinds, China hacking into Microsoft, Russia hacking into the Colonial Pipeline, China hacking into the New York City Transit Authority. Oh, but they're unrelated, my friends. That's what they want you to believe. According to the New York Times, hackers gained access into systems used by, as I already said, the New York City Transit. Point being, in just a matter of a few weeks, and this is just a smattering of the things that we're hearing about. Like I said a moment ago, what about the things we're not hearing about? But in a matter of a few weeks, I want to show you some things. I want to connect some dots for you. We've seen our energy supply, Colonial Pipeline. We've seen our food supply, or in part, with this what is this company? I keep forgetting that their name. JBS, this JBS Foods. Yes, it's JBS Foods, meat packers. So we've seen our energy supply, our food supply, and in New York, our transportation system all hacked in a matter of a few weeks. Think there's a pattern here? You think there might be a connection here? You think I might be overreaching? I don't think I'm overreaching. Because here's what I absolutely am convinced of. And just for the record, folks, usually my gut is correct. I'm not always 100% correct, but for the record, my gut is usually correct regarding these things. But what do you think they're doing? Presumably Russia and China, along with most likely Iran and North Korea. I have personally little doubt that they're probing and scoping out our systems. They're poking us. And apparently, they are indeed able to breach our systems. I've seen some reports saying with the Colonial Pipeline attack that it was Putin trying to send a message to the Biden administration. I think they're poking us. In fact, I'm sure of it. I think they're poking us to see how vulnerable we are and how we will respond. And that could be a whole nother discussion, because at least publicly, it doesn't seem like Biden responded very forcefully with maybe some rhetoric. But here's what I think. I do think that they're poking us, they're probing us, and then the big hit will come. And it's probably something of an irrelevant thing to point out that, yeah, we're cyber hacking them back. There's no question about that. We certainly are. But as Americans and for our daily lives, here's what's important to really understand in the most simplest of terms. If our enemies can hack in and disrupt our supply chains and infrastructure, it doesn't matter how much we're hacking into the other side. You set up a cascading domino effect of a worldwide internet collapse at some point. The dominoes begin to fall, and that cyber warfare turns into a supply chain collapse. Remember those three words: a supply chain collapse. Cybersecurity experts in America right now are saying, they're telling us, they've been warning us, that U.S. supply chains are particularly vulnerable to such cyber attacks. John Hultquist, who's a researcher from security company FireEye, which was one of the major companies that the SolarWinds hack broke into. But this guy who's a researcher, who's an expert, he said, quote, "The supply chains, logistics, and transportation," somebody say New York MTA. "The supply chains, logistics, and transportation that keep our society moving are especially vulnerable to ransomware, where attacks on choke points can have outsized effects and encourage hasty payments, like we just saw last month when the Russian cyber terrorist attacked the network of the Colonial Pipeline. It caused supply disruptions, and they quickly paid the ransom." And everybody knows when you quickly pay a ransom, you're just enabling the criminals. They'll do it again, and the next ransom will be more. I don't even understand why we did that. And I've heard mixed reports, by the way. I've heard mixed reports. And let me put the caveat out there. It's hearsay. I can't confirm it. It's just something I heard. But Colonial Pipeline paid $5 million. That's been pretty much publicized. What hasn't been publicized is I have heard, again, unconfirmed, that the U.S. government paid $90 million to these hackers. Again, I don't know if that is the case. It's just something I heard. So I want to be clear about that. But let me get back to the importance of where I think a root of the problem that's going to mushroom is coming from. Remember the SolarWinds attack back in March of 2020? I bet you some of us really didn't pay attention to it. But SolarWinds is a major U.S. information technology firm, and it was subjected to a cyber attack that spread to its clients, and here's key, it was undetected for months. The Russians were spying on major American corporations, companies, everything from small businesses to our government. Foreign hackers who some top U.S. officials believe are from Russia, and that's been pretty much confirmed. We've got sanctions on Russia now because of the SolarWinds cyber attack. But this hacking into the system, they were able to spy on private companies like, as I mentioned a moment ago, the cybersecurity firm FireEye. So imagine this, a cybersecurity firm which is getting a lot of its information through SolarWinds and is being protected ostensibly through SolarWinds, they themselves are getting hacked into. Up the upper echelons of the U.S. government were hacked into because of the SolarWinds breach, including the Department of Homeland Security and the Treasury Department. This was a big deal, people. But I think a lot of this flew under the radar because you know what else happened in March of 2020? The WHO declared the coronavirus a pandemic right about the same time that the SolarWinds cyber attack took place. So I think many of us, and I'll say for myself, we didn't pay it much mind. We hear about cyber attacks. So we were completely distracted by the COVID pandemic. And I'd be willing to bet that was by design. So we've got food and fuel and transportation and pretty much everything else really that are vulnerable. And these are not only, by the way, national security concerns, although they are. But here's something I was thinking about. Oddly enough, they are also targets of the green agenda as well, which of course is a major component of the Great Reset. I'll get to that in a moment when I start talking about cyber Polygon. But I wanted to lay out a foundation right here. I wanted to bring to your attention what's going on, because I know, like myself, many of us, listen, we're just living our lives on a daily basis, going to work, maybe not paying attention to a lot of stuff that's going on, but they are already planning. Hear me out. They are already planning the next major crisis. And I'll explain what I mean when I come back. But I read let me say this before I go to my break. One more thing here. It seems to me, no matter what, we are moving into a cyber war. And as I just said, the global elites are gearing up for the next agenda-driven crisis. And they're telling us it's going to be far worse than COVID was. As I've said for a year and a half, I do believe that COVID was a trial run for something much greater and much bigger. I said that back in February and March of 2020. And just the other day, I saw a headline that said this: we're just a cyber attack away from chaos and panic. And on that note, I'll take a break. But stick around.
Hang on.
You'll want to hear about cyber Polygon. Hang on.
When the waves are crashing.
Stick around. That was a tune by Plum called Hang On. Welcome back, everybody. Andy White here. You're listening to Open Up the Doors here on Faith FM, Integrity in Broadcasting, WEGB 90.7 and 93.3 in that peak, and WEGQ 91.7 in Quag. And I'm bringing I'm bringing a huge dose of reality to those who are groping around in the miasma of an alternative universe. Now, the question is at hand as I continue with the topic at hand. Is a global cyber attack the next planned crisis to push us towards a global reset? Let that question sink into your spirit. It's not crazy. I'll ask it again. Is a global cyber attack the next planned crisis to push us towards a global reset? You see, the socialist globalists are coordinating and implementing their agenda. They're manipulating and maneuvering these engineered crises in order to bring about their objectives of a centralized global control. And it's all at the expense of our freedom, security, and liberty, my friends. That's what the Great Reset is all about. And this cyber Polygon is part of the World Economic Forum's agenda to work towards the Great Reset. Last week, I stumbled upon this expose in a web blog called The Sociable. And the headline or the title of this expose was Prepping for a Cyber Pandemic. Prepping for a cyber pandemic. Cyber Polygon to stage supply chain attack simulation. Let me repeat that. Cyber Polygon to stage supply chain attack simulation. Yes, my friends, the World Economic Forum will be hosting an event on July 9th, that's a little bit more than a month from now, called Cyber Polygon 2021. The event is aimed at ostensibly preventing a digital pandemic. Like I said, ostensibly anyway. The World Economic Forum is going to stage an attack simulation, attacking the global supply chain. Take a deep breath and let that sink in. Prepping for a cyber pandemic. The exercise is to prepare for a potential, as World Economic Forum, WEF founder Klaus Schwab says, a potential cyber pandemic. I almost want to maybe I have a quote here by him. I don't know if I could do a Klaus Schwab imitation. I don't know if I can really do it right now. I was practicing it before, but now I don't know. I'll just tell you what he said. A cyber attack with COVID-like characteristics would spread faster and farther than any biological virus. A cyber attack with COVID-like characteristics would spread faster and farther than any biological virus. I want to play for you a clip from the World Economic Forum talking about this. Listen up closely to this.
The COVID-19 pandemic has shaken our economies and societies to the core and shown us how vulnerable we are to biological threats. In the digital world, similar risks are being overlooked right now. A cyber attack with COVID-like characteristics would spread faster and further than any biological virus. Its reproductive rate would be around 10 times greater than what we've experienced with the coronavirus. To give you an idea, one of the fastest worms in history, the 2003 Slammer sapphire worm, doubled in size approximately every 8.5 seconds, infecting over 75,000 devices in 10 minutes and almost 11 million devices in 24 hours. Fortunately, at least until now, cyber attacks have not impacted our health the way pandemics have, but the economic damages, and therefore the impact they have had on our daily lives, have been equal and sometimes even greater. You see, the only way to stop the exponential propagation of a COVID-like cyber threat is to fully disconnect the millions of vulnerable devices from one another and from the internet. All of this in a matter of days. A single day without the internet would cost our economies more than $50 billion, and that's before considering the economic and societal damages should these devices be linked to essential services such as transport or healthcare. As the digital realm increasingly merges with our physical world, the ripple effects of cyber attacks on our safety just keep on expanding at a faster pace than what we're preparing for. COVID-19 was known as an anticipated risk. So is the digital equivalent. Let's be better prepared for that one. The time is now.
The time is now. It seems like every time I listen to a video put out by the World Economic Forum, like they did with the Great Reset, it seems like they always end their videos with "the time is now." The time is now for their globalization in their mind, for their centralization. The time is now for what? Well, as I said, Cyber Polygon is going to be an event held on July 9th. It's put on by the World Economic Forum's Center for Cybersecurity platform. Right from their website, they tell you what, again, they put it in such nice terms. On the surface, it seems like a good thing. We want to help the world. We want to help the global community. We want to help businesses and tech companies how to prepare for a cyber event. And on their website, they say Cyber Polygon is a unique cybersecurity event. That word event just leaps out at me. It's not a seminar. It's not a conference. It's an event because they're actually going to simulate a global cyber attack. Cyber Polygon is a unique cybersecurity event that combines the world's largest technical training for corporate teams and an online conference featuring senior officials from international organizations and leading corporations. In other words, folks, it's the global and political elites. They've been doing this Cyber Polygon since 2019. This will be the third one. But they say the training brings together a wide range of global businesses and government structures, while the live stream gathers millions of spectators from across the world. So once again, for those who think this is a conspiracy theory, it's right out there in the open. You can go online when they're having it and just and be part of it. Millions of spectators from all across the world. Now this year, Cyber Polygon, as I said a moment ago, but I want to read it right from their website so you understand we're not making this stuff up. Cyber Polygon 2021 will simulate a fictional cyber attack with participants from dozens of countries responding to a targeted supply chain attack on a corporate ecosystem in real time. And folks, here's the deal. The same people and groups involved in Cyber Polygon 2021 are the same people and groups who held the Event 201 pandemic simulation in 2019. You know about the Event 201 pandemic simulation, right? With the Bill Gates Foundation and others and John Hopkins and the whole list. It's the same people. You know, they simulated, they war gamed a make-believe coronavirus pandemic in October of 2019 that, lo and behold, coincidentally, wow, became a reality. Their very scenario, the very things they said they were practicing came a reality 3 months after this simulation. All these folks are doing the same thing. But there's one more thing, and I would be remiss if I forgot to mention that with this Cyber Polygon 2021, I forgot to mention Russia. Yeah, Russia is playing a lead and key role in the simulation event. I mean, really? This is better than a Tom Clancy novel, folks. The World Economic Forum, along with Russia's Cyberbank or Cyberbank, however you pronounce it, Saberbank, I think it's called. It's like Russia's largest bank. But the World Economic Forum, along with Russia's Cyberbank and Russia's cybersecurity subsidiary, Bizone, actually it's the cybersecurity of Cyberbank, Bizone, announced that a new global cyber attack simulation would take place in July. Oh, how wonderful. How wonderful. You see where this is going? I'm laughing, but it's not a laughing matter. This is serious. I want to give you this information because I'm sure that most of you probably aren't aware of this. Most of you probably haven't heard about this because they don't talk about this in the media. The central theme of the training in July this year will be the ecosystem security and mitigation of supply chain attacks. Again, it sounds like a good thing on the surface. Think Event 201. It's amazing how they war game something right down to the very details, and it came to pass. This exercise on Cyber Polygon, this exercise will include two scenarios, defense and response. So again, in a nutshell, to make it simple, they are wargaming a global cyber attack and how to respond to it, which is essentially exactly what they did with Event 201. They wargamed a viral pandemic and how to respond to it, and lo and behold, just a few months later, what a coincidence, COVID was released on the planet. According to the World Economic Forum, COVID-19, as that we just heard in that video or audio for you guys on the radio, they knew COVID-19 was an anticipated risk, and they're saying so is its digital equivalent, a computer virus. a cyber attack with COVID-like characteristics, this is what was in the video, a cyber attack with COVID-like characteristics would spread faster and further than any biological virus. Its reproductive rate would be around 10 times greater than what we've experienced with the coronavirus. Klaus Schwab says it's important to use the COVID-19 crisis as a timely opportunity to reflect on the lessons of cybersecurity community, to draw and improve on our unpreparedness for a potential cyber pandemic. Now, I'm not exactly sure that's how he sounds, but that was pretty close in my head. Listen to what he said, in case you didn't get through the accent there. Klaus Schwab said it is important to use the COVID-19 crisis as a timely opportunity. They've been saying that since the beginning, about advancing the agenda, about advancing their plans for Agenda 2030 and the Great Reset. And he's saying, the lessons that we learned from COVID-19, we need to use them now in the area of a cyber pandemic. In that video, you heard this. Listen, let this sink in. The only way to stop the exponential propagation of a COVID-like cyber attack is to put a mask on your computer. No, I'm only kidding. Now, the only way to fully disconnect the millions of vulnerable devices from one another and from the internet is to unplug it. In other words, shut down everything. Shut down anything that works on Wi-Fi, shut down anything that's on the internet. If your TV's on the internet, shut it down. Your laptop, your cell phones. The only way to stop, in other words, the vaccination to stop the global computer virus would be to shut everything off, to pull the plug for at least 24 hours. But again, a single day without the internet would cost our economies more than $50 billion. And I think that's a really lowball figure. And that's before considering economic and social damages should these devices be linked to essential services such as transports and healthcare. So you can see where this is going, folks. An effective cyber attack would compromise anything connected to the internet, including medical devices that keep people alive. The Internet of Things, all your connected devices, your smart homes, smartphones, cameras, microphones, everything would have to be turned off. The global financial system would go into a meltdown. Energy grids would be the energy grid was something we've been talking about for years, would obviously be compromised and in danger. Water treatment facilities, military and defense infrastructure. And this guy, Jeremy Jurgens, who's the World Economic Forum's chief business officer, said this: I believe that there will be another crisis. Well, of course there will be, because they're planning them. They're using them as false flags for their agenda. I believe there will be another crisis. It will be more significant than COVID. We need to start preparing for that now. We need to start this cooperation and understanding early so that when the crisis does hit, we're in a position to respond effectively to it. That's what they said in Event 201 about coronavirus, and look what a mess that was. I would anticipate that when we do see this next crisis, and how soon will we see it, it will be faster than what we saw with COVID. The exponential growth rate will be much steeper. The impact will be greater. And as a result, the economic and social implications will be even more significant. I've been telling you folks for a year and a half that the coronavirus was a precursor for something bigger. They're all but admitting it. I think it's really important, this leader in the World Economic Forum said, I think it's really important that we don't underestimate the severity of a crisis like this, the impact it could have. It's going to take all sectors of society and the economy to address that. In other words, globalization. In last year's Cyber Polygon 2020, and also there was meetings in Davos in January 2021 that was all connected to this. They said that these events, these crises were meant for reshaping, this is a quote, reshaping the entire global economy and revamping all aspects of society under a new form of stakeholder capitalism brought on by the Great Reset. I talked about that back in February and March. Go back and listen to those broadcasts if you missed them. The Not So Great Reset, Build Back Better. There's a whole series of things I did on the Great Reset. But folks, this, again, it's all out in the open. It's all out in the open. They are playing us. The socialist globalists are coordinating the implementation of their agenda, as I said a moment ago. They are manipulating and maneuvering these engineered crises. I know there's going to be another crisis. I'm sure he does know because they're planning it. They're planning it to bring about their objectives of a centralized global control. And they're not playing games. And for those of you who might think this is conspiracy theory stuff, all I can say, as I've been saying all along, is it's not. It's all out in the open if you care to go and look. But I got to take a break. I'll be right back in a few minutes. Here's a tune by Power called We Are Messengers. And we are messengers, folks. And I'm trying to give you information and a message that will help you. But stick around. I'll be back in a few moments. For fusion of heart, mind, and soul, this is Open Up the Doors with Danny White here on Faith FM, WEGB, and 90.7 and 93.3 in Napeague, WEGQ 91.7 in Quag. Integrity in Broadcasting. Thanks for joining in, everybody. I am streaming live on my YouTube channel if you're just joining in. You can also find our videos on Rumble as well. If you've never subscribed to Rumble, you can find me there over at Rumble at AJWhite777 as well. We're getting YouTube's really cracking down more and more on stuff, so we're getting all of our videos up over on Rumble. Listen, I have a very special Open Up the Doors group page on connectzing.com that I would love to invite you to join. Connectzing.com and join up in the Open Up the Doors group page over there. It operates just like a Facebook group page. You can post articles of interest there, of course, from a biblical perspective and worldview. The cultural things we discuss, the biblical issues we discuss, the eschatological things that we discuss, or eschatological, depending on your part of the world you live in. I said that for my wife's sake. Anyway, moving right along, please go on over to connectzing.com. Join up, sign up, and the group there, the Open Up the Doors group there is growing little by little. And I would appreciate it so much, and I would welcome you so much if you joined over there at connectzing.com. Well, I got a few minutes left, and I got more than a few minutes worth of notes left. So I need to decide here which way I want to go with this. Somebody, Debbie Whitmer, my video producer, video production expert, in the live stream commented all of this, the things we've been talking about, the Great Reset, the whole COVID-19 pandemic, Cyber Polygon 2021, all these things we're talking about. She said all of this is leading to the Antichrist and the Great Tribulation. Debbie said hard days are up ahead. And Debbie, you are absolutely correct. And I would want to encourage others of you who are on YouTube right now, if you want to jump in the conversation, go ahead. Jump in, share your thoughts, share your comments, ask your questions as I look through the comment stream here. But Debbie is right. There is an agenda, but it's God's agenda. Men and nations might think they have an agenda, and they do, but God is in control of the agenda. And this world is rushing headlong into the system of the beast. Whether they know it or not, God's word will come to pass, my friends. I mentioned earlier in the broadcast an expose that I read in a web blog called Sociable. It was actually a very good article. But here's another extract from that article I think is worth mentioning. It said under the section called Digital Identity. Digital identity is a major component of the World Economic Forum's Great Reset agenda. A digital identity keeps a record of everything you do online, including what you share on social media, the websites you visit, and your smartphone's geolocation. And it can house all of the credentials you would normally find in a physical wallet, such as your driver's license, insurance card, credit cards. A major goal of the Great Reset is to create, as we've talked about on this broadcast, new economic systems that are digitally based and either partnered with or run by central banks. These banking economic systems would be part of the answer to controlling the masses of the unemployed that was created by the destruction of small businesses and the capitalist free market system, which we already began to witness during the COVID pandemic. The next cyber pandemic is going to make COVID look like a skip through the park, my friends. And this is what they want to happen on purpose. The Great Reset is seeking to destroy capitalism as we know it. And remember, as I shared about in several broadcasts, when they talk about quote-unquote stakeholder capitalism, what they are really talking about, what they really are establishing is fascist corporatism, i.e. communism. Now, this digital identity, which is a major facet of what the Great Reset wants to implement, this digital identity, along with their digitized economic system, would allow those who control them to turn off a person's money and access to services if that individual does not comply with certain laws, mandates, and regulations. Let that sink in, because this is where it is heading. This is precisely the system of the beast infrastructure. If you don't bow down, if you don't comply, you will not be able to buy or to sell. They'll turn you off like a water spigot. Not only that, you may wonder why is the World Economic Forum so intent on having this cybersecurity? The World Economic Center for Cybersecurity is very much connected. It's the backbone of all this. Why are they so interested in this? It's for control. Imagine if a hacker were to gain control over someone's digital identity. They could essentially shut them out of participating in civil society by erasing them completely or exploiting their information in such a way that blocks victims from proving they have money in the bank. Can't prove you have money in the bank. You can't prove who you are. You've been hacked into. Everything you are has been wiped out. We've already seen small elements of that with identity theft in a lot of ways. This is identity theft, identity cancellation. You want to talk about cancel culture? This is cancel culture to the max. If you don't comply, you will be cut off from society, period. And it's funny when they do these simulations and when they do these events. It always seems as though the World Economic Forum is always identifying the problems they find as needing, quote-unquote, a global centralization of power. They've got a one-track mind. They want you to think they're altruistic. They want you to think they're compassionate, and they care. They care about the global community, only to the point that they can control them. It's all about control. And every one of their final deductions, their final conclusions, always comes down to the same thing: a global centralization of power. And this newest simulation, this Cyber Polygon 2021, this simulation that they're going to execute on July 9th, it fits completely within their Great Reset agenda. For years, we've been warning about an EMP attack by some rogue nation like Korea shooting a missile at us. And that's certainly something that's possible. But now we're finding out that they don't even need to fire missiles at us to create an EMP. They can just take the grid down with a cyber attack. An EMP would cause long-lasting physical damage, of course. But a cyber attack would but not be as damaging to the actual infrastructure, which they don't want to destroy the infrastructure. They need it. Having said that, though, if you get a long enough disruption in the electrical grid that could set up a scenario for an actual physical attack from a cyber war, turning a cyber war into a kinetic war, the dominoes will just fall and spin out of control. And I believe we're heading that way. So what do we do with all this? Remember, again, Event 201, they simulated a viral coronavirus pandemic and how to respond to it. That was their goal. But a few months later, what a coincidence. It just broke out on the planet. So let me ask you this in closing, and I'm running out of time. Can we expect another amazing coincidence sometime right after Cyber Polygon? Well, time will tell. Time will tell by the time we get to the end of this year. But as I've been doing now for 7 years here on Open Up the Doors, I strongly recommend you. I strongly encourage you, folks. What do you do with this information? Prepare, prepare, prepare. Prep, prep, prep. Stock up on food, medicine, hygiene supplies. I've been telling you this for years now. Stash emergency cash. If there's no internet, there's no credit cards. There's no bank transaction. But your local, whatever left on the shelves at your local grocery store, they'll take your cash. Stash up on emergency cash, and as much as you can squirrel away. Buy a generator. Become as self-sufficient as you possibly can. And in the meantime, because I'm out of time, watch, stand fast in the faith, be brave, be strong, and let all that you do be done in love. Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Open Up the Doors.